And welcome to an Oak Harbor City Council workshop. It is 2 o'clock. The date is August 23rd. I'd like to call the meeting to order at this time and begin by saying that I have a commitment with my lovely wife at 5 o'clock, a few minutes before 5 o'clock. So if the meeting's not over with a few minutes before, I'm going to hand it off to our Mayor Pro Tem. But, we should be able to get it done in 3 hours, right?
I'm feeling filibuster.
It is 2 o'clock. This will be both a physical and a virtual meeting. Some members of city staff and consultants may be participating via teleconference. Today's meeting may be viewed live on YouTube, Facebook, and available for viewing after the meeting on cable channel 10. HD 1090. Public comment is not normally taken at workshop meetings, although the council may allow or request public participation. We have no items for action on our agenda today. Before we begin today, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the sudden loss of the orca whale Tokete and the work of the Sacred Sea Organization. Our condolences are with all involved. I would also like to recognize the 5-year anniversary of our city administrator, Blaine Oborn. Blaine has been a valuable leader for our city of Oak Harbor and for my administration team. Blaine, if you will come forward, I'd like to present you with your 5-year pin. And he didn't know we were going to do this, so you get a letter. You don't have to read it until after you sit down. Thank you for 5 years. Appreciate it. I often get to do that with staff, part of the staff. Some don't want to be acknowledged, and I totally understand that too, Don't make a big deal out of it, but I figured I could surprise Blaine. Poor guy's got to answer to me every day, so that's tough. The city has received a well-deserved award from the Washington State Department of Ecology, accompanied by a letter which I will read as follows. The Washington State Department of Ecology would like to congratulate the City of Oak Harbor on receiving the 2022 Wastewater Treatment Plant Outstanding Performance Award for the staff's continued high performance in the operation of your treatment plant, also known as the Clean Water Facility. Oak Harbor has a great record as one of the top municipal wastewater treatment plants in Washington based on effluent limits and overall environmental compliance. Ecology would like to commend the team for their perseverance, dedication, and award-winning efforts. It takes pronounced focus and teamwork to operate and maintain a treatment plant in top running order. So I've got a plaque here at the podium with me, and I'm going to present that as they've asked me to do in this letter. And they also say thank you for the excellent service you and your public works staff provide to your community and to the waters of Washington State. So at this time, I would like to invite our Clean Water Facility Supervisor, Jack Robinson, and our Public Works Director, Steve Schuler, to come forward and accept this plaque and award. And I think we'll probably want to get a picture of this. Great. Jack, thank you so very much for all your efforts and hard work. Steve, thank you very much. You betcha.
You guys turn around so we can get a really good shot of you. This is exciting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we do have an agenda, if you would like. I think we've got extra copies of that. First item on our agenda, actually, that was the first item on our agenda. The second item on our agenda is Parks and Recreation Marina Rate and Fees Update. And for that, I'd like to turn to our Harbor Master, Chris Sublett. Chris?
Nice to get awards like that, so that's great. Uh-oh. Well, we'll just work with that. So I'm here today to talk to you about rates and fees for the marina. And I've got a short little presentation with a ton of information in it. Tim will bring it up in just a second. There we go. So this is a continuation of a discussion that we started back on June 28th. At that meeting, Paul Sorensen from BST reviewed a rate study with the City Council, and then we introduced the 4 marina rate options. So fast forwarding to today, we're going to rediscuss those 4 rate options, and then hopefully at the end of the presentation, we'll be able to determine which of those 4 options the Council would like to bring back on September 19th for consideration. Just some history on the marina rates. March 19th, 2019, the City Council approved a resolution approving rate increases that were to be implemented on April 1st of 2019, 20, and 21, and 22. In 19, we went ahead and implemented that increase, and then in 2020, we suspended it because of COVID. And then in 21 and 22, we implemented the 3% increases as well. We are currently operating off of the 2022 rates because we haven't moved forward with anything for 23 yet. Just some quick information about the rate study. It basically compares our rates to marinas in the surrounding areas and compares our rates to these and finds averages and median prices and 90 percentiles and stuff like that. It's really a best practice. It guides us in our future rate changes and gives us good information on which way we should go. Where are we in relation to these metrics? So the rate study revealed that the Oak Harbor Marina rates are extremely low compared to the marinas around us. 41 to 53% less than the average, 32 to 42% less than the median prices, and 75 to 102% below the 90th percentile. The rate study also calls out and says that this is not sustainable. Eventually, it's not going to keep up with the operational costs if we keep operating in these levels. And he found that the biggest discrepancies are in the larger boats, in the 50 to 59-foot open moorage categories. We have vetted this with the Marine Advisory Committee. In fact, 2 of them spoke at the June meeting. But we went through with them on the rate study and the rates that we're proposing at the April and May meeting. And then at the June 5th meeting, they actually reviewed the rates that BST had recommended and made a motion to move forward with those rates to bring to you. Unfortunately, it didn't pass because the vote was tied 2-2. At that point, we asked the MAC members to give us a rate increase proposal to present us with things that they would like to see. So we scheduled a meeting for June 14th. It was a special Marine Advisory Committee meeting. And the MAC rediscussed the BST rate proposal as well as the study, and then proposals for Mr. Bradley, Mr. Scooby, and Mr. Jones. They're all Marine Advisory Committee members. A motion to adopt Mr. Bradley's rate proposal was made, and that motion passed unanimously. So as we look at these rate increase options, there's a couple things to note. The goal is to bring our rates up to the 2023 median rates in 2025. So it'll be a gradual increase just to get to the median rates of today. And the median rates are the rates that are lower than the 90th percentile and lower than the average. So we're not trying to get to the average, we're not trying to get to the 90th percentile. We're actually trying to get just to the median, which eliminates some of the high value and some of the low value. One other thing to note is that as we're doing this, other marinas are going to be increasing their rates anywhere from 3 to 5 to 8 to 10%. So even when we get to that median value, we're still going to be way behind the curve. We're still going to offer an exceptional value. And this shows you in this chart here, and this is actually on page 51 without the circle, where we'll be in 2025 with our 2023 median rates. If we move forward with the BST proposal, we would increase our revenue annually approximately $88,000. If we move forward with Mr. Bradley's proposal, we would increase that revenue about $85,000. Mr. Scooby would be about $61,000, and Mr. Jones would be approximately $41,000. And these numbers are all based off of the $817,000 in permanent mortgage revenue that we did in 2022. So as we dive deeper into these options, into the different rate schedules that we could adopt in September, this chart shows us in detail what's going on with them. So the BST and Associates rate proposal moves all of the marina mortgage rates to the median price point for the Puget Sound within 3 years, and that median point is based on 2023. And the largest increases will be in the 40 and up size categories. This is the one that staff recommends. This one maximizes the yearly mortgage revenue. It keeps the marina under the average mortgage prices, which gives great value to our tenants. And it also brings all the categories up to the 2023 rate in 2025. If we move forward with Mr. Bradley's proposal, it spreads the increase out more evenly amongst all size categories, and it specifically increases the small boat size category more than the large boat category to make the large boat category less. It does not fully maximize the yearly mortgage revenue. It does increase, again, the smaller boats, which have a higher vacancy rate. If you look at our occupancy and vacancy reports, if you look at the 28-foot category, which would be absorbing some of these rate increases, it won't work out because that's where we have our hugest and most vacancy. The thing that's hard to explain for me, and the thing that is hard to swallow, is it may not be as fair and equitable as the BST recommendation, because now the smaller boats are absorbing some of the larger boat increases. And honestly, I just don't know how I would explain that to the large boat people. You should pay for the space that you utilize in the water, I believe, and the larger boats use more. Mr. Scooby's proposal suggestion was to increase everything by 7.5%. That doesn't optimize the annual mortgage revenue, and it keeps us far below where we want to go with that median price. Mr. Jones, his proposal was to increase all sizes by 5% in 23 and 24, and then 7 in 25. And again, his doesn't optimize the mortgage revenue either, and it keeps us far below the median as well. So just to close this out, our recommendation is moving forward with the BST Associates rate increase recommendations on a 3-year rate schedule. This will help increase the reserves, which will reduce the amount of the bond that will be required for dredging. We'll be able to build up a lot of reserves. We're not going to be able to rate our way into dredging, but every little bit that we save is less of a bond that we have to get later on. So that's a huge thing. That reduces the amount that each tenant will have to pay when we do get that dredge bond. And it makes it a quicker payoff, because when we get that dredge bond in 2 or 3 years, unless something drastically changes, the rates could be much higher. So that dredge bond payment will include a higher interest rate based on the amount we borrow, of course. This plan also allows us time for accurate estimates for the dredge and reconfiguration project, which we're working on behind the scenes, and you guys will get more information on that in September. And importantly, it brings the marina pricing more in line with the current Puget Sound median pricing trends. Still offers a great value. So we're at the point now where I'd be happy to answer any questions or have a discussion or anything you'd like to do at this point.
Thank you.
We're looking for direction at this point.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions, input? Yes, Councilor Muntz.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Sublette, do you happen to know how much DNR is predicted to charge us for our uplands part in 2024?
So with DNR, we have two agreements. We have one lease for the tide line, and then we have an agreement for the uplands area.
Okay.
The upland area is everything that's dry, essentially. So in the uplands area, we do not pay any rent at all. It's kind of an agreement to agree to disagree on who actually owns that. In the Tidelands area, we pay approximately, and this has been consistent for the last, well, since the lease went into effect back in 2019, pay approximately $31,000, $32,000 per year. And that's what we expect to pay each year, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's adjustable based on inflation and certain things like that, CPI.
How many years are left on that 10-year lease?
6 years, so it goes to 2029 essentially.
Okay.
All right, another question is, with this increase in slip sizes and moorage, is there any way, I know we're trying to refigure the marina and stuff, but you know, orange in a restroom is so 1969
Yeah.
and 70,
Yeah.
and it would be nice, I mean, for our guests that come in, and when you're comparing them, I mean, I just found out Des Moines got a huge bond. They've built a beautiful, in the parking lot, public restroom, and they're starting, you know, take all the coverings off, and, you know, they're also reconfiguring and stuff like that. But when people come, they're clean. They're as clean as they can be. The problem is it's orange and a
Yeah.
pukey green.
Yeah.
And they're old toilets. They're
Yeah.
first grader size. I mean, I'm short, but when I've got my knees up under my chin, I mean, to be modernized would help. Even in Des Moines, they have where the visitors and tenants use, it's old restrooms, but at least they've been modernized. They have handicap size. They only have 2 toilets, so I know, I've used both of them there. And it's a really old, big shower, but it's clean, and you don't put coins in anymore. But, I mean, but it's got good water flow and, you know, all this kind of stuff. So is there any way that some of that money can be used to modernize? You don't want to do too much because they may be moved. I don't know, but it would be nice to show that this isn't all going towards the dredging, that you're getting something from it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it absolutely makes sense. And you're speaking about the restrooms underneath the harbor master's office. I would add that the ones over by the launch pier are yellow, so that might help. And a little more modern, and there's 3 showers in there, and 1 stall and 1 sink in the ladies' restroom. But yeah, that's something we're always working on. Interestingly enough, we always get great reviews for our marina, and bathrooms are a huge thing in the boating, as you know, and we get lots of great reviews on those. But we do have plans to do some painting and upgrading this winter. Again, this increase, while I talk about tying it into dredging, the rate study showed that if we continue on this path, even our operational expenses won't be covered. And I would consider that to be an operational expense as well. So we do plan to do some stuff like that as well.
Okay, and I personally feel like, I mean, we have a boat there, we've had it there for a long time, but the city needs to make the decision, are we going to really keep our marina viable? It would be a huge economic development. It does bring people in. I have been there during smelting season, and I can't identify all the languages. They're down there, they drive from Tacoma or farther just to come up and smelt. And it's neat to sit there and watch them come out with their buckets and say hi, and they'll show you what they caught. I mean, we have a gym. We just, through the years, have not been able to keep up, or we put the attention to it. Oh, it works, nothing's sinking. Let's keep it, I mean, it's good how it is. But we've got to, and I would be inclined to do with the BST study. When you go someplace, you know how much you're paying compared to what you're paying here by what we have to pay to rent a slip for the night. And we are dirt cheap. I mean, it isn't cheap, but comparatively it is. And it would be nice to be somewhere kind of in the middle, but even by doing this in 2025,
Right.
we're still not going to be really in the middle. I mean, so you need, this is, I would hate to lose it. It was a gift from the Navy, which we were lucky, and we have the title for it, and I just think it's something that's important. And I've seen the kids down there feeding the salmon, the little fingerlings, and there's just all kinds of activities. It's not just what people say, rich people keeping their boat there. And I think it ought to be fair, and I agree with our harbor master that the smaller boats, why are they paying for the big boats? If you have a really, 50, 60, 70 feet, you shouldn't be getting a deal on your boat. You have probably planned to be paying for it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
You bet. Counselor Stuckey.
So a couple questions. If we take this recommendation, we're going to be jumping a few marinas in terms of cost. I understand there's some assumptions because those will also jump and who knows. So a bit of a subjective question, but when you're looking at some of those marinas we're jumping, like Kingston, LeConner, Des Moines, these are not marinas I'm familiar with. How would you compare our marina to them in terms of amenities and overall quality? I know it's a subjective question, but you might know these marinas and I don't.
Yeah, sure. So when you talk specifically about Des Moines, they're another city-owned marina just like us, in similar condition and similar shape. They're undergoing, I want to say it's a roughly $20-30 million upgrade project going on right now. The interesting thing about Des Moines, they have roughly 700 slips, is that they're in a metropolis. So they draw from everywhere that is around their marina and beyond. So they have a pretty good cash flow, and that's how they're paying. They are getting a bond, but they are paying largely in part from their marina reserves in their operating funds. So overall, they're very similar to us currently, but within a few years, they're going to be similar to Cap Sane, all brand new everything. Kingston is newer than us. It's quite frankly a nicer, newer marina, a little bit bigger as well. We probably are a step below them. And then LeConner is very similar to us as well. LeConner was built roughly the same time we are. They're very similar to us in the sense that they're not a destination marina. They're more of a stopover marina as you're heading to the islands. And their docks and their covered moorage is aged like ours as well. So we're close, but yeah, you're right. They're all going to raise their rates, most assuredly. And they're going to catch us really quick, probably around the January timeframe or wherever their next rate increase is. The common practice now, marinas are going up anywhere between 8 and 10% is pretty common. So when they do that, they'll be far ahead of us again.
You mentioned a few times that if this keeps going, you don't raise our rates, eventually we won't be able to sustain our operations.
right.
Any estimate on how long that would be from now? I mean, are we talking 2 years from now we're not going to be breaking even, or are we talking 10 years?
That's a really tough one to answer because it depends upon what breaks at the marina. And I'll give you an example. This past winter, everything's rolling along fine. All of a sudden, we have no pressure down at our fuel dock. Short story is we found that the pipes, actually both, the gas and diesel, underneath the launch ramp, had gotten holes in them and were leaking into our containment system, so it worked perfectly. But just to fix that was about $70,000. About 2 weeks later, we're down there pumping fuel, and all of a sudden there's more diesel coming out the bottom of the pump than out of the hose. The meter pump on the bottom of it had failed, so we had to have him call to get that fixed. That was another $6,000. So these expenses add up rather quick. If we have an electrical failure, if we have a major storm that wipes out FDOC, you have to keep in mind that our insurance deductible is $100,000. So that $100,000 on one event could wipe out what we're putting in reserves each year. BST estimates that we put away about 100,000, 150 on a really good year. So to say how long would it take, that'd be hard to say. If nothing breaks, we could probably continue on for years and years. But the one sure thing in marinas is that something is going to break. So.
Sure, and to kind of piggyback a little bit what Councilmember Mullins was talking about, but in more broad terms, will some of this money be going towards, would the plan for some of this money be going towards improvements for the marina? Or is this all we're just keeping the reserves up and worried about dredging?
No. As Ms. Munn said, there are things that this will allow us to do, such as maybe upgrade the restrooms, put in some new whalers, put in some new electrical stuff. We'll do some upgrades, and we continually do those as we work along at the marina. Many of them are just not noticeable to somebody who's not familiar with marinas because we're looking at infrastructure first and then the bells and whistles second.
I mean, where I'm coming from, and I'm assuming that others might be thinking this as well. If you're going to charge middle of the pack prices, you better have preferably middle of the pack service, amenity, and quality. But I do understand that we're a little behind the 8 ball where we're playing a little bit of catch
Right.
up. But that's kind of where I'm struggling is, it's okay to charge bottom dollar if it's bottom quality amenities. But if we're going to charge middle of the road, we need to at least start approaching middle of the road as far as quality and amenities. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that the median value is below the average, which would be the middle of the road. It's down here. We want to provide the best services we can. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We love getting those reviews. We love hearing good things about us. It just comes to money. And yes, this does allow us to do some things. But the first thing is to keep the marina floating and operational.
Thank you.
Councilor Hoffmeyer?
Yeah, when I'm looking at this here, it's obvious that, some increase is needed. I think also what shouldn't be lost on us is the marina is also a wonderful public park. So that's something to factor in there as well. And this council as a whole has done a great job at focusing on this and, intend to move this forward here. When I'm looking at the BST rate versus the Bradley rate, when you tell me that the Marine Advisory Committee was unanimous on the Bradley, it makes it hard for me to want to go against them. Is there anybody from the Marine Advisory Committee that would be willing to speak to that?
Yes, Mr. Hewlett just showed up. He's the chairman and a great supporter of the marina in the city.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Ken Hewlett, and I'm a resident of Oak Harbor and current chairman of the Marine Advisory Committee. And I didn't really have a chance to discuss this with Chris in advance, but I'm kind of leaning more towards the, Ryan's proposal, at least not maybe in its whole measure, but in certain selected areas and so forth. But Chris is right. You never know what's going to break next. And we are in absolute maintenance to keep the doors open mode. We can't really afford, the marina, can't really afford to match a lot of the amenities, even if we wanted to, that are available in other areas. We don't have the upland areas to support, restaurants or more exotic haul-out facilities or dry stack moorage, which is kind of a big deal now in the marketplace. We just don't have the room because it was great that the Navy gave us this property back in the 70s for the marina, but the uplands areas are not adequate to support what we need to do there. We can't think about expanding moorage space, for instance, because that means you have to have more parking space for people that are going to arrive and leave their cars for a few days and utilize the marina. So, it's always a dilemma. Nobody likes to increase rates, and certainly we don't. And we have a contingent in our committee that has been pretty adamant about, well, we should be getting something for this. If we increase rates, we should be getting something for it. And my comeback to that is usually, well, we have to do something in order to keep the place open, floating and open, because floating is kind of an important thing in a marina. So I don't know if that answers the question that was posed, but I think there's a little room kind of in the middle. There are a few things that we know that we're not charging anywhere close to the averages, and there's some very definite reasons for that, because we don't have the amenities that we would like to have and that most marinas have. And as Chris well knows, that when you start looking at other places, they have significant haul-out areas. You can park your boat and work on it, or have somebody else work on it. There are restaurants and chandleries, the places that sell the bits and pieces that go into boats. Usually when we have work done on our own boat, we have to have somebody from Bellingham or Anacortes come in to do that work. And it's a shame, frankly. There are some local vendors that do certain things, but some of them are kind of semi-retired and not terribly interested in working the 40-hour week or whatever. So I'm kind of rambling a little bit, I realize that. And so maybe if you had another question for me, I could be a little more pointed.
Think you can, yeah. And the reason I ask that is I know if the Marine Advisory Committee, supports our actions here, I mean, if you guys support it unanimously, for instance, it makes our job on the ground
Sure.
much easier. And that was the reason I asked. And I don't know if there's some way to bring back that middle,
Well,
that
there's-
fifth option.
We take a hiatus during the summer because that's when you boat around here. And so the committee hasn't met since May, I think. And I viewed it as still kind of an open issue. We need to get on the docket and, be working through the process and so forth. But I think it's going to take one more meeting of our advisory committee to make a full-blown recommendation. Right now, the recommendation is to go with the kind of middle ground sort of thing, and I think there's some room to tweak that a little bit, but I don't like to kick the can down the road, but this can isn't empty yet, and I think we need to work on it a little bit more first. So anyway, any other direct questions?
Thank you.
Sir?
I think Councilor Stuckey had a direct question. Otherwise, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, it is a direct question. So just to confirm, the BST versus Mr. Bradley's, it's like a couple $1,000 difference, correct? They're pretty close
On an annual basis, yeah.
on an annual basis. So looking at just those two options, you believe Mr. Bradley's is a better way to go because it spreads it out evenly among the boat? Because we're talking about close to the same amount. Like, can you articulate a little bit to me why you think?
Yeah, in general, yes, that's a valid observation. But there are, the tendency now is away from smaller boats and to larger boats and so forth. And we have very limited access to those kinds of mooring opportunities for larger boats. So we have to be very careful about forcing out part of our revenue stream, which is the people with smaller boats, just because we try to make room for somebody that's in a bigger boat. So it's a real tightrope, like most things, when you start thinking about raising rates, increasing rates and so forth. And striking the appropriate balance between paying the bills and making everybody happy is always a difficult thing to do.
Not owning a boat myself, and this is a very broad statement, so just tell me from your own experience, the larger boats, when you're getting over 50 feet, I would assume the people owning those boats come from a more affluent income than someone who says he has a 28-foot boat. Wouldn't the impact be
better.
over? And so wouldn't it be safe to assume that those more affluent individuals be more readily available to take that hit than someone who owns, say, a 28-foot boat? I mean, it's very
I
broad and
think
very
that's a fair-
general.
That's a fair statement.
Okay.
The other big factor is more and more boats are trailerable, physically able to trailer than used to be. So, you know, we've always been sensitive to that as well. Sailboats, not so much, but certainly powerboats and a majority of our crabbers that we have in the marina. Those folks, you know, if the prices get a little too high, they'll just put them on a trailer and go park them someplace in your neighborhood, maybe, I don't know. And we don't want to see that because the empty water and the empty slips don't do anything for us or
But-
the city.
But the trailered boats, I assume, would be the smaller boats, not the 58-footers.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
so I'm still rounding about to, wouldn't it make more sense to have the higher fees on the larger boats than the smaller ones? Because the smaller ones are more likely to jump ship because of the
General,
rate.
yeah, in general, I agree.
It just, I'm trying to figure out, because I'm always sensitive to when a committee makes a recommendation of taking
Yeah.
that to heart.
Yeah.
But it almost seems, and maybe I'm making a leap, you're almost, your statements are almost making it sound like the BST is the better option. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything, I'm just trying to read between the lines, not being a boater.
I wouldn't say, you know, the mechanism is valid, you know, and the folks from BST, this Mr. Sorensen, did an excellent job and so forth, but we are not comparable to those marinas.
Sure.
That's the big issue. And I would imagine that a lot of our tenants have their names on waiting lists in other marinas right now, for a variety of reasons. But we are inexpensive, and quite frankly, if we were privately owned, we'd have to have a return on investment to the you know, whoever owned it would be interested in some sort of return on their investment. And we don't have to concern ourselves with that particular issue, but all the other costs are going to be kind of the same. It is true, certainly, and it was validated by the BST studies, that there is a real shortage of large slips in the Puget Sound. Because when most of the marinas like ours were built back in the 70s, there wasn't a need for a 50-foot slip, or very many 50-foot slips. Now it's common that boats are just getting bigger. The people that, like my age, that are getting a little older want a few more creature comforts on the boat and so forth, and, you know, want to be standing out in the rain, you know, that kind of thing. Sailboaters do that, but power boaters don't. Anyway, it's an apples and oranges comparison to a certain extent. So I think reading the committee, we recognize that we need to increase rates, probably not as much as the BST things, although that would make sense in a marketplace. If it was privately owned and so forth, and we were having this kind of a discussion, I'd be pushing for the BST rates. But I think we can serve more people than just out-of-town boaters and stuff. You know, 70% of the people that are in our marina come from either the Oak Harbor zip code or Coupeville, and that's unusual. You know, Chris mentioned the folks down in Des Moines, and they've got people from California and all over the place because they can draw from a variety of areas. So you know, we're a bit unique in that regard, and it's kind of a good news, bad news comparison. We don't have the ability to offer a lot of the amenities that other people can do. And the good news is that we can do it more cheaply than other people can do it. So I think there's a little bit more work to be done at the committee level, and we can get that done in a relatively short amount of time. So again, not wanting to kick the can down the road, but I think there's a little more wisdom that needs to go into this analysis before we present it to you for a final vote.
So with that in mind, unless there's some reason this has to be done in September, I would almost prefer for that one more meeting to occur before a decision is made, personally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. To answer one of Councilor Stuckey's questions about how we compare in terms of amenities and stuff, in the past couple of years, I've visited maybe like 20, 24 different marinas in Puget Sound and Canada, and many of them don't have water, many of them don't have fuel, most of them don't have carts, and we have all of those things. We have Wi-Fi, water, carts, showers, laundry, fuel, pump out. There's even barbecues for people to use and bikes for them to borrow. So while we are definitely dated, the amenities that would make for a comfortable overnight stay for your average boater passing through, they are there. They could be improved, but it's not like we have nothing to offer, just from that perspective. And, you know, and to follow up on Councilor Hoffmeyer's sentiment about going against a committee's recommendation, you know, we have this group of volunteers, this is all they do is review this stuff and bring forward a recommendation, and so I loathe if, you know, to ever go against that recommendation, but I don't see how we could choose an option other than BST and Associates. Honestly, I think, and, you know, you mentioned the Bradley plan kind of equalizing the rate burden. It doesn't. It still increases the small boats percentage. It's just a little more fair than the other plans. It doesn't make it equal. And the BST does. And so if I'm gonna say, okay, so foot per foot, if I have to pick one group to shoulder a little more of that financial burden, why would I pick the little guys? Like, how can I justify that? I can't justify that to the public. So it's important to me that any increase is, you know, we don't necessarily have to put more of the burden on the big boats, but I think it should, at a minimum, be equal, at a minimum. I just, yeah, personally, ethically can't justify making the little guys pay more. It's not just ethically, but also in the plan for expansion, we're gonna be reducing the number of slips for the smaller boats. So if we, you know, hitch our wagon to that star and then we start reducing the number of smaller boats, then, you know, it's kind of, the plan itself is not really designed for long-term sustainability. So I totally understand that everybody's loath to increase their own rates. You know, nobody likes it, everybody hates it. But even if we go with the BST plan, we are still below the average for the area. So it's not like we're, you know, we have all these dated amenities or limited amenities and we're, you know, charging up the wazoo. That's just not the case. It's still going to be reasonable for the area. So I would be comfortable going with BST's recommendation for those reasons. Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Marshall?
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, forgive me, this may take me a minute. So I have a couple questions and some observations, I guess. My first question is the staff's recommendation is that we do this over 3 years, correct?
Yes.
But all the information that we have is based over 5 years.
Right. The original plan that BST put together was for 5 years. The first 3 years got us to that median, 2023 median price. Then years 4 and 5, the increases dropped off significantly, and that kind of brought us on a level keel and kept us even, assuming that the other marinas were going up, you know, 8, 10%, 5%, whatever they're going up. That draws us closer in years 4 and 5 to make a major decision in year 6. So as we talked to Paul from BST about that, we talked to him about, well, let's get to the median value, and about that same time, we'll be entering into the dredge process in a big way and getting a bond and all that, and see where we're at and see what we need to do. Is that dredge fee going to be so high that we can't charge a median or average mortgage price that most of what people pay is for the dredge fee? Or is it going to be kind of equal or balanced? And he agreed with that. He was like, okay, I understand where you're going with that. So that made sense.
So I'm trying to understand, for the 26 or foot less, I'm looking at the covered slip rate schedule and the proposed increases for 26 feet or less. It is 30% over 5 years. Are we looking at then doing just the first 3 years and just so doing 20% and then reevaluating after that? Or are we trying to do all 30% within the first 3 years?
No, it's just the first 3 years on that schedule. The
Okay.
years 4 and 5 are not included at all.
Okay. Then one of the questions I had is if we're going to increase, some of the increases on these are significant in the very beginning. For example, the storage sheds is 20% the first year, then 5%, 5%. Why not spread that out over 3 years? So if it's a total of 30%, why not just do 10%, 10%, 10%? Because it seems like a lot to absorb right away, whereas if we could spread that out, and it's not just that, it's the liveaboard fee as well. It's 30% the first year, 15%, and then 10%. If it's 60% total, why not 20, 20, 20?
Right, and I talked a little bit to Paul from BST about that, and he felt it's better if you go right out of the gate with a higher rate in the sense of collecting that money and then easing it off as you go along. What you're saying, it conceivably could work, but it draws out the amount that you're going to gain over that period of time.
Okay, I would just wonder if that would be more palatable, though, to those who are going to pay it, as opposed to so much right up front. When would these, if we were to continue with the schedule as proposed and we were to have this on the 19th agenda and we were to vote on it, when would the 23 increases take place, and then when would the 24 increases occur?
So our target date for making the increase was October 1st. So what our plan would be is in September, we would send out a message or an email or a letter to all of our tenants saying there's a possible increase coming. Then after the 19th, we would say this increase is coming and it'll be effective on October 1st. And we would follow that up with articles in our newsletters and signs around the marina that the rates have gone up effective October 1st.
And then for 24, it'd also be October 1?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, it'll be a year from the date we do it. So if we decide to not meet in September but meet in October, then our target date would hopefully be November 1st. It's always got to be the first of the month, and then it would be a year thereafter. That's why we didn't come back to you with something solid during the past few months, because we certainly don't want to do a rate increase during the summer, our busiest time when we have boats in the marina for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. It would have been extremely difficult. So we prefer to do them in the off-season, and they would be a year from the date that we first implemented them.
Okay. Another question I had is, so if we're below other marinas, and you know, one of these things it says that most marinas do not offer discounts on annual rates. Why would the recommendation be to continue offering that discount?
So one of the challenges that we used to have before we had a yearly rate is particularly the bigger boats and even some of the smaller boats to an extent would go out cruising for the summer and they would give up their slip, knowing that there would be something in Oak Harbor when they came back. So we would lose that revenue for those 3 or 4 months or the winter, whatever side of the equation they were on. This way, we're giving them a small discount, but we're ensuring that revenue while they're out cruising, while their boat's in their driveway, while they're having it repaired versus giving up their slip and thinking that they can come back here and get one.
Okay. It said the electrical fee is higher than most marinas, and that should be linked to service and replacement costs, which are significant. If we're already charging higher than other marinas, then why are our replacements so significant? Are we not banking then some of that money towards replacement? And then why is ours so much higher than others?
So our power system, our electrical system, a lot of it was redone back in 2010, 2011 when we did the dredging. But the vast majority of it is original from 1974. We do a lot of that work ourselves. The parts for our pedestals, the parts and wire that we need to fix things around the marina is super expensive. So as we look, and the reason we charge more is just the cost when we have a major failure. As we look at the dredge and reconfiguration, there's all kinds of new standards out there that we're not up on because we're grandfathered in. They're going to be super expensive. Our electricity honestly doesn't cost any more than probably any other marina, but it's somewhere where we've tried to generate revenue with the future in mind of replacing pedestals and stuff like that.
And how has that gone? I mean, do we have that kind of reserves, that we have
It's,
that ability to do the replacements?
Yeah, it's a slow process. The staff has several that they've rebuilt. We just haven't installed them yet, so.
Okay. You mentioned Des Moines having $20 to $30 million for capital improvements. Where did that money come from? Did they go to the public then for that?
No.
Okay.
They had a bunch of reserves because, again, they're bigger and they're always full in a more populated area. They also received, I believe they received some general fund money from the city council, hint, hint. And then they also got a bond as well, so.
Okay. And then Mr. Scooby provided his rationale for his recommendations, but is there any methodology behind Mr. Bradley's recommendations other than trying to split it out evenly?
As I recall, and Ken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think he said he was just trying to ease the burden on the larger boats, but make it more fair and equitable for the larger boats and spread it out to the smaller boats as well. Was his target, wasn't it? Yeah, I think that's what it was.
He doesn't happen to have a larger boat, does he?
No, he has a 32-foot sailboat.
Gotcha. All right, I think that's all I had.
He's got two of them, actually.
All right, thank you, Chris.
Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you,
Councilman
Mayor.
Munns.
Chris, why don't we charge for parking? I know that Des Moines has the gates, right now they're broken, and they're putting in a new system, but a lot of them, and they have a electronic, they're in Everett, to pay for when they launch a boat.
Yeah.
And I remember taking pictures and giving them
Yeah.
to,
Yeah,
anyway.
I did look into that.
But it's kind of easy, and if someone just puts their boat in and they're not, I know we have a sticker, if you have a slip there, you get a sticker for your car. But,
We have entertained charging for parking, and quite frankly, the reason Everett charges for parking and Des Moines is largely due to substance abuse happening in their parking lot, believe it or not. We actually discussed that at a harbor masters meeting, and that way they can control who's coming in and out of their parking lot. Their tenants don't pay, just like you said. We have a sticker, they have a card or something like that to get in and out. But that's the reason they did that. If you look at the makeup of our parking lot, you come down past the yacht club, and then you would turn into the parking lot. And if the marina ended right there, that'd be fantastic, and that would work out. But we have Mariners Haven at the end of the parking lot. We have the launch ramp at the end of the parking lot. So how could we control that short of having the booth and the person sitting there? So I don't think it would really work out.
well, when they launch the boat, they'll be
They pay-
parking the
yeah.
trailer.
But they pay a $10 fee to do that, so.
It might be 50-50 who does and who doesn't, unfortunately. Yeah, okay. So it is possible, though, hearing from Mr. Hewlett, that they might want to take one more round looking at this, if it won't hurt you just to wait till October before it is brought to council. Yes, we have a unanimous vote, but it sounds like, rush for summer, this and that maybe they might want to tweak what they recommended. We'll lose one whole month of raising it, but
Right.
is it a breaker?
No, I don't think it's a breaker, and we can certainly do that. The goal of today was to learn which plans you liked, and I'm hearing a lot of BSC, and I'm hearing a lot of Mr. Bradley's rates. So, excuse me. We can certainly add that to a future agenda in September. It'll be a long meeting because we're going to talk about dredging. You don't know about that, but we are. And then maybe come back to another workshop or city council meeting. I mean, would you be interested in going through this type of meeting again to see the options again, and then coming back in November to solidify them? So it would actually be December before we would do it. So it'd be a couple of months. What would the council like to see?
Counselor, did you have an answer to, did you want to answer that?
I would say you've kind of heard about two choices, so I don't think you have to go through all of them. And I'm sure Mr. Oborn can let us know if this can be pushed off to another agenda, if there would be room, or are we pretty stacked up for the October? I know you plan really far in advance. Okay.
Counselor Stuckey, do you have a?
Yeah, I just wanted to, it's always important that we give staff kind of what we're thinking during these workshops. Personally, I too am leaning towards the BST, but I also want to give the MAC time to have that one meeting.
Sure.
If that meeting, if you take some of the thoughts we've had here and that share at the MAC and they kind of say, well, maybe there's some merit to the BST, well, then I don't think we need to go through a workshop again. If they have something different or they're doubling down on that other one, then it might be worth further discussion. But at least for me at this point, I'm leaning towards the BST unless there's something else. But I'd rather give them that last meeting and I respect that last meeting.
Sure. That's great information. That's exactly what I was hoping for.
Anyone else? Counselor Marshall?
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, Chris, I had one more question is, what goes into the Marina staff? We have the hourly rate and it's Marina staff. What does that entail?
So how much do they make an hour? Is that what you're asking?
No. I'm not sure what, I don't have a boat. I'm wondering
Okay.
what duties the Marina staff does
Oh, my gosh.
that the boater would have to pay for then. That I'm just curious.
Yeah. The Marina staff does everything they can possibly do at the Marina. They have the mentality of, can we fix it? Can we rebuild it? And then the last thing is, can we buy it brand new? And that's how the Marina staff has operated for years. And I got to tell you, they're amazing people and have an amazing skill set. If you as a boater break something at the Marina, say, for example, you're pulling into your slip and you break a light off the power pedestal, you break the power pedestal, you're in covered moorage and you break a 4x4, a 2x4. Those type of things we charge for, and our hourly rate is roughly $90 an hour. Along with if you want any sort of, say, dock box installed or a new cleat or any sort of small alteration to your slip, we don't allow our tenants to do anything to the slips. We do it all, and we charge for that as well. And then whatever that improvement is, it stays there because it usually involves putting holes in whalers and you pull it out and then you get rain and rotten whalers. So when you look at what we charge for from the staff level, it's things that you either break or things that you want outside of the normal for your slip.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I too would tend to lean towards Councilmember Stuckey's recommendation. My concern with front-loading all of these expenses or the increases is, you had mentioned when you initiated the dredge fee, there was kind of a mass exodus.
Right.
And that's my concern is if we front-load all of these fees and say, okay, you're going to pay 30% more in year one, but only 15 in year two, if it is, indeed more palatable to spread that out so it's not so much up front and then initiating a mass exodus of people going, no, I'm not going to pay that huge increase and then
Sure.
take it off. And so I too agree with the BST, but have some concerns about how those percentages are split up.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Chris. I have relied heavily on personally at least, on Marina Advisory Committee. I appreciate those people, and we've always had a pretty darn good, especially since I've been mayor, pretty darn good group there. And again, I little minor hesitation because it looks like there's a kind of a split there, but I hope that they'll understand that we want what's best for the marina up here.
Yeah.
Councilor Munns made the comment that we can't afford to let that marina go away, and I fully agree with that. Mm-hmm. And in fact, as staff, went to D.C. this year to talk to the Army Corps of Engineers for the first time, and it was staff's suggestion that we do that, and that was a very, very interesting meeting And I think still there's a question about whether we have a federal waterway between our marina and around the point out there, because it's not clearly defined. So we have been working on dredging, and even the potential of hiring some other help, outside help, to try to get dredging done and affordable, have it more affordable, and looking for opportunities that have never happened before in my time with the on city council. So and in the mayor's chair. So that marina is important to us. Thank you, and we'll do our best to not only keep it going but improve it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your help.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, we will at this time move then to our third item on our agenda, which is human resources compensation classification update for non-represented employees. And for this, I think we have definitely our human resource director, Emma House. Thank you, Emma. I don't know whether we have a contractor here with Cabot Dow. We do. Good. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I'll turn it to you, Emma. Thank
Great.
you.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. Yes, Emma House, Human Resources Director, and I'm here to present the classification and compensation study for your non-represented employees. So these are the employees that are non-represented by any union. We call them our non-represented employee group. Let's see. Do I click here? Thank you. So we did a classification and compensation study this year, and we want to make sure that we bring an update to you as of the status of where we're at in that progress of that study. Go ahead. Oh, it worked. Okay. So here's a little bit of the history. The request for proposals was opened in January. The contract bid was awarded in February, and the study is now getting finalized this month in August. So a very quick time frame and a lot of work done in that quick time frame. And to give you a little bit of background as to why it's important for us to do the classification and compensation study, in our municipal code 2.34.080, it talks about compensation. It is the policy of the city of Oak Harbor to pay adequate levels of compensation to city employees. Compensation levels should reflect the market for such personnel in the region. And also our health insurance benefits, which is 2.34.085. It is the policy of the city of Oak Harbor to provide health insurance benefits to its employees at a level which is comparable to benefits provided by other local municipal government entities in the state of Washington. So we really focus on those items in our code. And part of our employee policy manual, it talks about salary administration, and the classification plan is designed to pay salaries that are internally equitable, to pay salaries that reflect the market for each classification at comparable municipal governments in Washington state within budget limitations and with full consideration of the public's interest. So for the classification and compensation study, these were the goals that we were really focused on for this year. Internal equity for our employees for long-term retention, align our position descriptions, salary, and benefits with the market and our comparables to stay updated, make sure that it's easy to understand our salary placements by all city personnel, make sure that we are fiscally responsible for city council with equitable salary adjustments, and externally competitive for recruitment with market and comparables to stay updated. And I would like to introduce Alexandra Sheeks from Cabot Dow & Associates. She has been very involved with the study from day one and has done a lot of work for our group. And she is going to do a presentation for you about the study. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us today, and we're happy to be here. Just a little bit about us, and we're going to have a little presentation come up. Okay. We are an independently owned human resources consulting firm that has been in Western Washington since 1980. We specialize in public compensation and collective bargaining throughout Washington State, primarily in Western Washington. And all of our professionals and staff are former city human resources employees, and so we really understand the public sector world, and particularly the city world that we are working in. So just to talk a little bit about the background of how we go about a compensation study, and we have what we call 4 pillars of a good compensation study. First of all is to have a goal, to have a reasonable and rational way of selecting comparable agencies, to make accurate job matches, and then to commit to results. So I'll explain each of those things. So first of all, when you start a compensation study, you want to say, what are the goals? What are we trying to accomplish here? Are we trying to make sure that our employees are being fairly paid? Which employees are we talking about? As Emma mentioned, this was primarily for non-represented employees. We weren't looking at police, we were not looking at public works staff, but non-represented employees at this point. And so having a compensation philosophy or policy allows you to establish what your values will be. And we usually recommend or encourage organizations to adopt values that have consistency, that your compensation system is transparent, and that it's fiscally responsible. And then also to get into some of the nuts and bolts, and then provide for good communications with your staff, with the elected officials, with your public. At a minimum, we recommend that an organization define its goals for where you want to be relative to the selected market. Usually expresses a percentage of the market value, usually at the median, and then the role of total compensation, which the city has already done to an extent, which is great. You have specifically said to pay salaries that reflect the market for each classification at comparable municipal governments in Washington State, within budget limitations and with full consideration of the public's interest. And this is great, especially the part about within full consideration of the public's interest. A lot of times that's a point that is missed. A lot of times when we look at some of these compensation studies, we can run off and kind of lose sight of that. So that you're in good shape there. Second of all, we want to define the market. And so that is, as you've broadly said, is looking at other comparable municipal agencies in Washington. And so we define this as objective criteria based on established metrics, including population, total budget, FTEs, similar services and scope of duties, and then there's also a role for historical comparables, and then geographic proximity. And these are all really designed to get at the size of the city and the scope of the services that you're providing, really to reflect the character of the city in a sense. We do like to look at historical comparables that have been used to see changes over time. There are certainly precedents involved in bargaining that we have to consider legally. Geographic proximity, there is some consideration for that, especially as you're looking at other organizations. In this particular study, we did include Island County to give a look at that. But we are encouraging a lot of cities nowadays to look outside of just the geographic proximity. The reason for that is because it gives us a better understanding of kind of the foundational value of a particular position within the city. And it broadens the scope of cities that we have to select from with similar services. So, we cast this net more broadly to yield data that guides us in making decisions about salaries, and it keeps in mind more fiscal responsibility. And the question often comes up, well, how can we compare to a city in Eastern Washington where they have some different economics than we do, and we do use Bureau of Economic Analysis regional price parity adjustments for those. And so to lead into that, we have selected 11 comparable agencies for this study. Several of them are nearby, several of them are farther away. So for example, we have Moses Lake, we have Walla Walla. These cities were comparable in size, in total budget amount. And so in this particular slide, the ones that have the asterisk were adjusted with a regional price parity to account for some of those differences. So third is we define the positions, and that's in order to match the jobs accurately with the other jobs in those cities. And so the first part of this project was actually to take an in-depth review of each of the positions that were included in the study. And our team looked at these. We had employees fill out position analysis questionnaires, excuse me, to help people understand, to help us understand what was a part of their job and to see if any adjustments needed to be made to the position descriptions. So we gave a detailed look at this. We tried to understand the complexity of the jobs, what types of budgetary or policy influence that those jobs might have, what kind of lead or supervisory responsibilities, and looking at other prior job experience or education required. We also use organizational charts to look at the differences between Oak Harbor and the other cities. And we approach each analysis as if it's an unfilled position. So we don't know who is in that position. We don't know what skills or particular specialized roles that those people bring into the position. But we're looking at it as if you have a position that's vacant, and what would it take to bring somebody into that position compared to another city. So finally, when we've gathered all of the data and we look at the results, we say we want to trust the data, not the assumptions. There are a lot of emotions that go into this type of study, especially on the part of employees, a lot of expectations to say, well, I know somebody in another city that does my same job, and I think they're paid more than me, and why am I not paid the same amount? Or I know that all of these other cities are hiring for this position and they're advertising it for much more than I'm being paid. And so this is to really get at the data, not just assume that, what somebody says or has a gut feeling about or just sees anecdotally is correct, but actually to see what the data says. And we also look at it from an internal parity standpoint. What I mean by that is that we look at jobs that maybe aren't in the same department, maybe aren't doing the same exact thing, but they have similar levels of responsibility, of complexity, of autonomy. And we also look at compression factors. So what are supervisors making compared to subordinates? What are managers making compared to department heads, and all of those types of things. And then also, when it comes to implementation, we encourage sticking to that compensation philosophy and applying it evenly to the results. So in other words, we want to be cognizant of what changes to the salary structure might look like to the public. We want to make sure that it doesn't look like only one department is getting all of the changes, or it doesn't look like only management are getting changes to their salaries versus other positions. So we want to be thoughtful in our implementations, make sure things are applied evenly, objectively, and according to the data. So to summarize this particular study, on average, the salaries for these non-represented positions, and this is just salaries, not talking about total compensation yet, were 4.2% above the 10-year median salary. So what we did is we looked at an employee, kind of a model hypothetical employee who had been at the city for 10 years. What would that employee be making based on your salary schedule? We looked at that same number in all of the other comparable agencies and looked at where they were. And on average, the city of Oak Harbor's positions were 4.2% over that median range. So we look at the median 50th percentile of the market. We were able to match 44 out of the 56 positions that we surveyed, so at an 80% rate, which is pretty typical of what we're able to find. We're not able to match every position fully because every city has unique positions. And we match those at what we say is at an 80% level. And so we're looking at a job description, we're going to say, is 80% of this job comparable to a similar job in another city? And then we say that that's a match. So we leave about 20% for wiggle room there. We found that there were 7 positions that were more than 10% above the market median high salary. And to go back to that, we use the high salary range because in public employment, in a city government especially, everybody gets to the top of that salary range at one point in time or another. So that's kind of the target as to where everybody's going. So that's why we use the high salary range. We found that 2 positions were more than 10% below that market median salary, high salary range. And we use the 10% as kind of a buffer zone. So we say if you are within 10% above the median, if you are not more than 10% below, then we would consider you within market. And the reason we choose 10%, sometimes that might seem a little large. It reflects the fact that we are matching a job to 80% of the job content. It's not possible to match a job to 100% of the job content or even 95%. But we feel that 80% is sufficient. So we say because of that, there should be a little more of a broad, kind of range for acceptability within those positions. So then to kind of narrow that down, we did look at how many positions were between 5 and 10% of the market, and nine positions were within 5 to 10% above the market. 3 positions were between 5 to 10% below the market. So overall, a little bit of a higher concentration of positions that were above the market than below. And so this chart here shows an average standing amongst comparables when we start looking at 10-year total compensation. So this takes the average rank, and what we did is we looked at each position, where it ranked in that position compared to the other cities. And so Oak Harbor fell kind of in the middle to the top of the pack in the high salary range in the 10-year. And so in this chart, a higher number is better. It means you're number one, you're the highest, and then a higher number means that you're lower down compared to everybody else. So what's going on here is that in the salaries, particularly at the high salary range and at the 10-year salary range, Oak Harbor is on average ranked third for those salaries. So kind of in the top third of those positions. However, when we start looking at the 10-year total compensation, so looking at things like insurance, benefits, paid leave, it falls more to the middle of the pack. And I'll explain that a little more. Overall, there's a negligible difference from the market when considering total compensation. So as you recall, the salaries were at 4.2% above the market when we just looked at salaries. When we start adding in all of those other compensation items, it moves to about even with the market. You have very comparable insurance contribution amounts to other employers. The holiday hours are pretty average, and across the state, we're not going to find a whole lot of variation from that because those are largely dictated by state holidays and things like that. Where the difference is really in the vacation hours and paid leave between non-exempt positions and exempt positions. So several of your comparator cities here are providing more vacation hours for exempt positions. And sometimes that varies between whether it applies to exempt positions, whether it applies to management or department head positions, but this is a difference. Whereas Oak Harbor has the same vacation hour accrual rate as all positions, it does vary in other cities. And, that's really a policy decision that these other cities make. Obviously, we recommend you look at the total compensation package. So where maybe paid leave is less, then salaries are more. And that's really a policy decision for the city to make. So the next steps after we take all that data is we then determine salaries based on the target market range philosophy. So as I said, we recommend 10% within the market. The city would need to look at what it has done in the past, what its policy is for matching, and then we would look at changing or making adjustments to the salary structure, and that can range anywhere from simply adjusting positions that were below or high within the existing salary structure, or actually changing it altogether. One observation that we made was that Oak Harbor's salary spread, so in other words, the difference between the minimum salary range and the top, or the minimum salary point and then the top step, are 33%, whereas in the market on average it's 25%. And so that number tends to change a lot over time based on economic trends. And just a few years ago, it seemed like cities were going to a broader salary range. Now they seem to be narrowing in. Because of inflation, they're having to bring people in at higher places on the range than they did in the past. So that's causing this compression within the salary range. Again, it'll probably change in a few years, but we'll see. We also recommend when you are making changes is to consider internal parity and compression. So if we start to make a change to a position that was below or above the market, then we have to start thinking also of where do subordinates or supervisors fall in line. If we push a position up, does that make it too close to a supervisor and vice versa? So it really is an art when we start to put all those results into the salary structure and to balance it fairly. We also have to consider those positions that were not benchmarked in the study. And so I think with that, that is the end of this portion of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, we'll turn to council and see if you've got some questions. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. It's reassuring to see that we are, not well outside the range. I've been on council for, I think, 12 years now, and the first compensation study we had, we were just like all over the place. So it's nice to see that we've fine-tuned that a little bit, and I'm looking forward to the final recommendation. When are we going to see you again?
What you're...
Okay. I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, that's good.
And it's like the last slide, I think, or second to last slide, next steps.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, right there.
So we are working on getting, we're working on getting the final report from Cabot Dow & Associates now that we've got all of the information and the study is complete. And we wanted to bring the information to you today to see if there was any recommendations, any preferences as we move forward, looking at our salary schedule and how we might make adjustments now that we have this information. As you heard, they did do the study looking at a above or below a 10% range. And in the past, our compensation philosophy has been about a 2% plus or minus above or below. So definitely some policy decisions between city administration and mayor that we've been discussing as to what is that percentage that we feel comfortable with as we do look at our salary schedule. So if there's any recommendations, we wanted to make sure that we gave you that time to give that to us. And then we would be coming back with a budget amendment after we adjust the salary schedule, which we're hoping to do in September. And then it would be to implement that for the employees that would be needing to get those adjustments, and then finalizing all of the position descriptions, because part of this study, which we did not do in the past studies, was to really dig deep into each position description. And now we have revisions for each of those position descriptions with a lot of recommendations for consistency, for our EEO language, ADA language, safety language. So a lot of work on the position descriptions that we have not done in the past. So these are the next steps that we're planning to do next.
Councilor Hoffmeyer?
Yeah, just like Councilor Heisen said, it is nice to see that we're kind of middle of the pack compared to other municipalities. And, just like the consultant mentioned, things are always changing. And I think we are middle of the pack with municipalities. I think that was pretty clear going in. Looking at some of the private sector, though, the freedoms that employees will have with being able to work from home and, 410s or, certain variations, more paid time off. Moving into the future, that might have to be playing into the comparisons as well. And I know, municipalities, the state over, are struggling with proper staffing limits. So as we move into the future, it will be nice to see how that all plays as well. But thank you.
Yeah, those are great ideas for us. Thank you.
Councilor Munns?
Thank you, Mayor. When you look at the position descriptions, can we see that, please?
We will have all of them with the red line versions from the Cabot Dow Associates, and then we will be working with the department leaders for their teams to make sure we finalize them. But of course, whatever you would like to have access to or see, please feel free to ask me, and I'd be more than happy to share that with you.
It just seems in the past at times we're advertised for a job and the description has been changed from what it was before, and council didn't know about it ahead of time. So I would very much be interested in seeing what changes are made.
Sure.
I think it's really important. Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Appreciate it.
welcome.
Councilman Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Emma. It would seem to me that 5 should go somewhere around, 2, where we would finalize the position descriptions while we're adjusting the salary schedule. Those two things seem to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious as to why that would be the last one. Why would we adjust the salary, do the budget, implement the salary, and then finalize the position descriptions? It would seem that we would do that kind of with the salary.
And definitely, I agree. If we can get it all done at the same time, that is the goal. I think we're really focused on trying to implement the changes as quick as we can within this calendar year, and knowing that we aren't recruiting for all of these jobs right now, so we don't have the urgency to get all those position descriptions finalized immediately, but definitely trying to do it at the same time is the goal, for sure.
So when we adjust some of these, we're not looking at actually, if somebody's 10% over, we're not looking to then decrease their pay, I would imagine.
No.
Okay.
The definite message here is that we're not planning to decrease anyone's compensation.
Okay. Yeah. So my priority personally would be those that are under to bring them up to where we need to be and prioritize those ones first, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Sorry, I have one more question. Currently, you said we were at like a 10%
With this study,
study? Okay, but in the past, the philosophy has been much
2%.
tighter at about 2%.
Yeah.
How does that compare to the current market? Like, where are most cities, or can't be, Councilor Hoffmeyer brought up a great point about competing with the private sector and how much the landscape has changed with people being able to work from home and lots of built-in flexibility, and there's, to some people, that's more valuable than the number on their paycheck. And so I'm wondering if, because of the changing landscape, if it would behoove us to, I'm not really sure how to phrase this, if it would behoove us to stay within that larger range, or if we really tried to drill down and limit ourselves to something like 2 or 3%, would that be hurting us more than helping us? Do you have a recommendation?
yeah, and it's an interesting time to ask because we're getting ready to do union negotiations. I think it is wise to kind of go a little bit more than we have in the past. I think that we have been really, really good at staying within that plus or minus 2%, which is why we see good results with this study. Staying within that plus or minus 2% for the past several years has really done a good benefit for us, especially during COVID. During COVID, a lot of our comparables did not do cost of living increases. They froze step increases. They did a lot of different things to prepare for what was possibly going to be the negative impact of COVID. Our city didn't do that. We were really good and we planned very well, and we budgeted for the cost of living adjustments and step increases, and we were able to keep all of that going. So we don't see us being as far off right now from other cities who are trying to catch up. But the other cities that are trying to catch up, they're having to do some significant percentages. So it does make sense for us to be a little bit more larger in the range than we have been in the past, maybe like a 4 or 5%, rather than going from a 2 or to a 10, somewhere in the middle of that.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, and then that is exactly where I was going with that, is if we set a goal of, like 5%, and then that would help tailor the recommendation in the final report. So I would, I would be comfy with 5%. I don't want us to be all over the place, but I also don't want us to, limit our competitiveness. So anyway, yeah, that's where 5% is what I'm thinking.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, Emma. I remember last time we did this study.
Yes. Quite
and
different.
I feel so much better
Yeah.
this time around. And, but again, I think it's imperative that staff, and they listen to these meetings, I know that we don't intend to lower anybody's salary. That's not going to happen.
No.
So that's important.
Yeah.
There may be a position or two that are maxed out.
Yes.
And I think we're aware of that too, that based on what we're seeing. So
Yeah.
a position or two, not a lot, but anyway, a few. But really good, thank you. And my hat's off to Cabot Dow. In the beginning, I probably was a little skeptical. And it was because of my experience last time around. I want you to know that. And your company did a really nice job of making me feel comfortable. And I think you've done a nice job of this so far. And of course, there's more to be seen by council and even me. I've seen some preliminary numbers about the full staff, but I don't think that I've seen completely the final yet. So that's coming soon.
Yep.
And thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Appreciate your time. And I appreciate Cabot Dow. Thank you. Let's move on then to the next item on our agenda, which is Police Department presentation. And today we have our Police Captain, Tony Slowick. Welcome, Tony.
Hi, Mayor, City Council. I'm here to give a presentation on our opioid settlement funds and the strategy for dispersing those funds. So
He's loading it now.
I think I loaded everything up sideways. Maybe that was the problem. Oh, okay. It wasn't me then. No. Okay. So in the packet that I guess everybody has their slides in front of them, I can go off that if that's okay. All right, so we'll just move this along. So the first slide is our Island County drug overdose trends that we've seen since 2019. In that, I did not put the 2022 data because that's not available from the Department of Health, but sourcing information from the coroner and other locations, the fatality numbers are consistent in 2022 as they were in 2020 and 2021. What I don't have is the non-fatality numbers that usually the medical provides. That's just not available there. So, but what that shows is a 60% increase in fatal overdoses in Island County since 2019. The background with this, if we go to the next slide, is that in 2022, the Washington State Attorney General resolved a lawsuit with companies found to have played a key role in fueling the opioid epidemic. Those companies are mostly pharmacies, drug manufacturers. That's what the settlement was with. The total settlement is $55 billion nationwide. So in April of 2022, the City Council authorized the signing of the One Washington MOU regarding the opioid settlement. And with that, that made us a direct recipient of opioid settlement funds from the settlement agreement. So that doesn't mean that it gets dispersed to another agency and then we get a cut from that. We get the direct, we're a direct recipient for that. Additionally, part of that agreement in April was that we would have to join an opioid fund agreement for a opioid abatement council. So we signed into that. And in January of 2023, we finally signed on to that opioid abatement council, which is called the North Sound Region Opioid Abatement Council. That opioid abatement council covers jurisdictions in Whatcom County, Skagit County, Snohomish County, San Juan County, and Island County. Oak Harbor has a seat on that opioid abatement council because we're a direct recipient and we're the only city in Island County to receive settlement funds. Oh, perfect, here we go. So as we talk about opioid settlement funds, our allocation, the settlement agreement is a 17-year period. It starts from 2022, goes to 2038. Our total funds that we receive is $955,055.46. That's dispersed over 17 years, and it's dispersed on, it all depends on what the each pharmacy or each manufacturer signed off on with the final settlement. So some have to pay out over a 17-year period, some pay out over a 3-year period. So that's why you see different, dollar amounts that we have or that we're going to receive. So for currently, or what we'll have at the end of 2023 is the 2022 and 2023 amount, which will be at $102,569.60. So I should just turn this. So like I said, the opioid settlement agreement creates 9 allocated regions. I explained to you what those 9 regions are. It also requires that all opioid funds, regardless of allocation, be used pursuant to the approved purposes. And then it sets forth what those are in Exhibit A of the 1 Washington MOU. So the main key sections of that approved usage are treatment, prevention, and other strategies. When we talk about other strategies, it starts getting into interdiction, it gets into law enforcement use, personnel, staffing, things like that. So part of our agreement is the North Sound Regional Opioid Abatement Council. This is who does the auditing for how we use the funds, and this is who reports out to, I guess, the community on how funds are being allocated in our region. So, like I said, the city has 1 seat on this Opioid Abatement Council. The requirement is that we pull 10% of the annual money that we receive every year for administrative cost or potential administrative costs for this Opioid Abatement Council. If those funds, those funds have to be requested requested by the Opioid Abatement Council from us. If they don't request those funds, they go back into our fund that we can distribute to the community or use as needed. The Opioid Abatement Council is responsible for the auditing and reporting of the settlement funds, and it also provides a grievance process. So if somebody feels like there's misuse of funds, they go through this grievance process through the Opioid Abatement Council, and there's language in there on how that gets resolved. So what we're recommending is that, 1, we post everything onto our website, just like we did the ARPA money, so that it's very clear on that we receive settlement funds and that how the funds will be distributed, which will be through City Council. We then have a 3-step process with this, which is that a department will make a recommendation for settlement use of the settlement funds. That goes to the finance department and the grant manager or grant coordinator to review the purposes and verify that they are in compliance with the Exhibit A of the settlement. Once that's verified, then it comes to a City Council meeting or workshop. The department will present the allocation or how they'd like to allocate those funds. There's then that conversation with the workshop or with the City Council on any questions and use of those funds. If it is a workshop, or I'm sorry, a City Council meeting, and it's a public meeting, it could be, a decision can be made to spend the funds at that point, or it could be pushed to the following City Council meeting, so, for allocation of the funds. Additionally, annually, the city staff will provide a report on how settlement funds are being used, the summary of what happened the prior year, and what's the balance in the fund bank. So, okay. And then, just this is a note part, is that the police department does intend to come back to a City Council meeting with a plan on how to allocate opioid funds that is consistent with all agreements and approved purposes. So. And I will take any questions.
Turn to council. Yes, Councilor Munns?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Just like each department works, and if they use a copy machine or the lawyer or whatever, they pay a part. So when I look on here at involving other city departments, there's the finance, grant coordinator, stuff. So would part of the money that we get would go to supplement what work they did for you?
Yes, yes, there is that opportunity to allocate funds that would be for administrative costs within the city. So for like what the grant coordinator does, or the finance department, or other administrative costs, into allocating these services, or in what we do in response to the opioid crisis. Yes. So, and there will be a plan for that as well, on a recommendation on reserving some funds for that
Okay,
purpose.
because I saw the 10% that would go to the, what, OAC or whatever, that group. So you might have a certain percent allocated, so if different departments are helping with different parts of this, then that, okay.
Definitely.
Okay,
I agree.
thanks.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Other questions? Oh, yes, Councillor Hoffmeyer.
Real quick, thanks for going over this with me on Monday. This is certainly a step that I was hoping we could take, and I'm excited. Thank you.
Yep, welcome.
Anyone else? Nice job, Captain.
Thank you.
You bet. Nice to see you.
Good seeing you too.
What's it? You had more? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, then we'll move on to our next item on our agenda, which is the city administrator's report. Turn to our city administrator, 5 years with the city,
Yeah, thank you.
Blaine Oborn.
Thank you, Oak Harbor City Administrator Blaine Oborn, now 5 years with the city of Oak Harbor, invested in the Washington retirement system. That's one of those major hurdles there. So it's great to be here. It's great to have worked with Mayor Severance for 5 years now, and I appreciate his leadership. So, and he said I can go an hour and 20 minutes, and he's fine with that, so I'll just keep on going. Nope? Okay, I'll take orders. Okay. All right, I'll go through this quickly as I usually do, so thank you. One of the major issues, kind of achievements here is legislative outreach, traveled to Everett to meet with the Federal Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. It was led by our Representative Larson, and he had representatives, U.S. representatives two from California and one from Missouri there. And they, Todd Morrow with the Island Transit was one of the 5 panelists that gave examples of use of fundings and such. And so it was good there to network and be there with other representatives, and great opportunity there. Other things going on to community support. Still meeting with Island County on our issue with our North Whidbey sewer expansion design grant request that we're working on. It's mainly towards industrial, but there's some affordable housing in that area, and they want us to kind of dovetail that in, so we're working on that. Great news also from Island County. I have like 3 of them, one maybe grant and 2 grants that we received. Island County for the Friend Marsh Preservation Project, we've received $582.49. I think they might have cut it for $1, but $490 for the Conservation Futures funding for the Friend Marsh. So there's 3 parcels in there that we're going to purchase, hopefully, and negotiation. Go ahead, Mayor. It's just over 500,000. Yeah.
I'm not sure I heard the 100,000, so thank you.
500,000. Okay. Yeah, so good news there, and appreciate the cooperation and the support from the county commissioners in that. Moving on to economic development, you're going to have, one of the things our economic development coordinator is working on is a strategic plan in part of the Island County Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or sometimes they call it SEDS, is an acronym referring to. So we were supportive of, and we were actually the identity that requested the county take this on. They've been a little slow in coming back for our funding request, but they'll be coming back on that for September 19th. And I think most of the council members had an opportunity to do a strategy and provide points there, and staff really contributed too. So it dovetails into a local plan and a county plan on economic development. Moving on, communications. the Beeksma Park message sign is kind of working on and off, and so staff are working on fixing that. Appreciate your patience there. Last night at the Plan Commission, we talked about the multifamily tax exemption. I got some more detail and learning more about that, and so the original plan was to bring that to the council, but some logistical issues, and so we didn't. We ended up pulling it off the agenda, but that'll come back shortly. On finance, our finance director and his staff are working really, really hard on enterprise resources plan, or ERP is what it's called, going to a new updated system, evaluating options and such. A lot of department head work on that, and so this is. I know there was a great success in doing the development services llama program, and this is kind of even much more comprehensive and will affect everybody in the city. A lot of work there, and I appreciate the leadership in moving ahead and kind of keeping us up to upgrading a more robust system to work with. And then good news here on our fire station, the hearing examiner approved our conditional use permit, so we quickly purchased the property. So the city is now owner. On August 15th, we closed on the Fire Station 82 site, and so now everybody's asking him when he's going to burn down, the chief, when he's going to burn down the house, and so, I think he's got an October date. Is that what it is? Correct. October date for burning down that structure. So you got a reputation here of burning down structures. So it's good training, though. Moving on, Parks and Recreation. Another good news here on grant received from the county is we've secured $1 million Rural County Economic Development Grant for marina dredging. So the cost is going up, and so certainly that dollar amount doesn't have to be passed on to the ratepayers, and so it's a great step here, and we're really looking for $40 million altogether, but I look at it as we got our first million out of it, so that's a good start. So great start there, and I certainly, once again, support the county, and that concludes my presentation, unless you want me to keep on going here, so I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Councilor Stuckey?
So I gotta go for an hour and 15 minutes?
No.
Two quick questions. One, we got a presentation a little while ago from our public works, our parks director, about different classes and things we'd like to do. Am I correct in reading that we haven't had a single application for a fitness instructor? Nothing?
I can't answer that.
I'm just going by what on here.
Yeah, I mean, she's working on it,
Okay.
and we'll reapply and continue to do things, and so it's not uncommon that sometimes you have a little glitch there and have to rethink things through, so.
The second thing was the removal of the Ridge Haven playground equipment. Maybe I don't think we were notified of that equipment coming down. I apologize if we were, but it led to a couple of correspondence of people saying, why is it being taken down? And we had no idea it was happening. And then to find out, per the comp plan, it's still going to be, it's a ways off before that equipment's going to be replaced. Was it that bad that had to be done right now, or could it have waited till it was closer to the time to replace that equipment?
I will have to follow up on that item.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Hoffmeyer?
Real quick on what Councilor Stuckey said there. Yeah, it would have certainly been nice to have a heads up, being that I was walking that neighborhood that day, and yes, there was quite a few comments. So I don't know if there's a way to advance that on the comp plan there, possibly.
Yeah.
The other thing, Blaine, thank you so much. I'm sure there are days that 5 years feels like eternity, and I'm sure there's other days that 5 years probably feels like a blank. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I'm trying to be funny, and I probably shouldn't try to be funny. Not a good comedian. But thank you so much, and mention and be invested in PERS. That's awesome. But I think the city's vested in you as well, and thanks for the success that you were helping this council usher in.
Thank you.
So I should know the answer to this question. Our hearing examiner decided Did he not, on the 3 issues?
He had 3 today, and I think he has 2 next week.
Okay,
Hearings, next week is the Angel of Creativity, because of its heights, has to do a conditional use. So that one's coming up, and I think they also are doing a subdivision. They don't have to do the PRD, there's a simpler process, and they did one today. I believe it was Sean Ridge.
was that approved?
Yeah, I
So that's
don't know the
20
status. He doesn't give he takes 2 weeks for the response, so I can't say whether it was approved. It was probably, ours went so smoothly, we did so good here with teamwork, when we did the one for, but that was exception that he gave a verbal approval, so usually he doesn't give a verbal approval
Oh,
in
okay.
advance.
So we're still waiting
Yes.
for the, I was excited because we've got 2 different 29-lot subdivisions for approval. And that's a lot of building lots for Oak Harbor. And that's soon to be done, I think, by the hearing examiner. He's got another one tomorrow, it sounds like. Had one today? Does he
I
have
believe
one?
it's this week. I
This
believe it
week,
was
okay,
today, and then he
okay.
has one next week, another one next week.
so-
Tim knows more because what Tim has to do the video on him, our videographer. So it's on Tuesday next day, and there was 3 today, right? Okay, thank you.
Okay. 2 different 29-lot subdivisions.
Yeah.
Coming soon, it sounds like. So that's good news. And so I don't have anything else, and I'll turn to council for additional council comments. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm still on the administrator's report. I just wanted to say that I have noticed some of the additional information in the report and some of the changes that have been made, and I think that they are fantastic. The historical year-to-date and month, call details for the fire department, the inclusion of photographs for public works projects, the website analytics so we can see which pages people are visiting the most. Excellent information, so thank you for continuing to beef up the report. It's all fascinating, so thanks.
Thank
Thanks to
you,
staff.
and I have great staff that likes to take the input of council and continue to provide as much information to you, so.
Love to see it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I'll end this soon, though. I just wanted to say that I know that you've put a lot of work in to your report, and if council will take the time to read that, it'll sure give you some answers. As you say, Blaine, I know you get some help from staff, but you're spearheading that, and so it's really a nice, it's a nice bit of information for us. Helps us, everyone in the city, know what's going on, so thank you. So, seeing no other city business then, I think we can conclude our business today, and thank you very much for coming.